Could I have your attention? We're going to get started. We are, as you all know, more than an hour over schedule, so we'll try to, in deference to our presenter, to try to get going on time, our new time. I'm hoping some folks will come in a little later and fill in some of the seats. We're very fortunate today to have with us Valerie Kisel, who is a well-regarded expert in the area of online professional development and online student services. She will speak to us today about providing, as the title says, which is very interesting, flipping student services. What she'll talk to us about is very consistent with the theme that we heard today about providing services to students when they need those services. And whether that's at home, in the evening, etc., how we put together a support structure that provides and gets services to students when they need them in almost or probably a 24/7 environment. Ms. Kisel has told me that she has worked at a community college for over 15 years, and in the areas of student service and in the area of providing computer-integrated support services, providing online advisement as one of her many, many roles. So I think she will bring a wealth of information to us today and help us as we move forward in our goal to be an intentional college. So let me just say, let's all give a very warm Essex County College welcome to Valerie Kisel. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for having me. I'm so excited to be here and honored to be here to talk to you about one subject I'm really passionate about, flipping student services, as Susan mentioned. I've been working at the community college level and with community colleges for over 15 years. A lot of our current services to the online format, and really thinking about how do we bring those services to our students instead of making the students come to us when it's convenient for us. So really catering to their needs and restructuring and enhancing what we currently do face-to-face and offering some of those similar services online. So if someone could help me answer just this first question so I can get a gauge as to where you're at in the development process. Do you currently offer online student services? And I kind of gave a range here, A, B, C, or D. What would be an accurate assumption? B? Did I hear B? B, C. So you have some online services, but you're looking to do more. Everyone can always do more. I think very few people are at the A level. I know we're working a lot with California community colleges because they just recently were mandated to offer every single face-to-face service they offer in an online environment, which, as you can imagine, can be particularly tricky for certain services. So they're having to move everything absolutely online. So, okay, you're somewhere in sort of the B to C area. So hopefully today I'm going to provide a lot of practical strategies related to each of the different departments of student services and really talk about how you can use different technologies to provide advising, orientation, counseling, etc. So really to give you a little background on how this kind of came about for me is just in working with students in an advising setting, or I worked in the online environment for many years, I would hear a lot of excuses, and many of these may sound familiar to you. And at first I thought they were excuses, and then later I came to realize, maybe these aren't necessarily excuses, they're really sort of our students' challenges, and to kind of rethink that it might not be our students just making up, reasons why they can't come see an advisor. It may have something to do with the services that we're providing. So, I have to work the night shift and then I have to put my kids to bed. I know we're dealing with a lot of students that are balancing a lot of different schedules. They have kids, they have jobs, they have family members to take care of, and we can't expect them to always come to campus to see an advisor, to see a financial aid counselor. So how do we kind of make sure those services are available for them at night or off hours? Now this one I struggled with a little bit, but I would oftentimes hear students say I didn't do it because I didn't know what to do. And at first I would get really frustrated, but then I realized, as we mentioned earlier today, that a lot of our students are really underprepared. They don't know how to be successful college students, and they weren't taught that in high school, and we can't sort of hold that against them. So we need to help them through that process even more so, and really help them figure out how to be a college student. This one also kind of frustrated me, but I got over it because I did orientation for several years, and students would say, do I have to attend? I heard it was really boring. And I have to, at first I was like, I put a lot of time into that orientation, and I'm, kind of took it personally. But then I realized, yes, it is, I think that format of orientation and giving students, 3 hours or a full day of information we think they need right away can be a little overwhelming for students, and they can find it boring. And then, as Susan mentioned, I was an online advisor for many years, so I would promise to respond to students' questions within 24 hours. And a lot of my students were veteran students. They were working either overseas, or they had just been stationed somewhere, or they physically could not come to campus, but they were still taking online courses, or they were planning to come to campus the next semester, and how do they sort of gear up and get ready to take courses when they're still overseas. So what kind of made me think that these are really not excuses, but they're challenges for our students. They're multitaskers, they're underprepared. A lot of students are really preferring to receive information online. And so these weren't necessarily things I should hold against the students. I should reflect about how we're providing the services, and maybe it's something we can do differently. And I thought I just recently read this, this quote about goldfish, but it's the average attention span of goldfish is 9 seconds, and the average attention span of a human is 7 seconds. I found a little disconcerting, but I can see it, and even more so with some of the traditional age students that are coming in. They have really high expectations about delivery methods and engagement, and it's not always face-to-face. So I think we need to be thinking about that when we're providing those support services. Now, on the flip side, I know that you're all dealing with challenges, and I think these challenges are pretty consistent and constant throughout. Lack of time and money, having to do more with less. You suddenly have increased enrollment, but your staff stays the same. And so how do you serve those students, those new students, with no additional resources? And then student non-attendance. I don't know if you have this issue, but we did a lot of student success workshops, and I would spend a lot of time preparing those, and then I would get maybe 1 student or 2 students attend. We spent all of this time sort of promoting them with flyers on campus, and then students just wouldn't show up. And so that was always really hard and frustrating for us in terms of delivering it, is just to not have the students there. And then trying to keep up with this online student support. Now, I heard earlier that your enrollment for online courses is going up. And so I think that's great, but I think an issue with online courses is the service piece. A lot of schools gear up the courses, get everything ready, and train the faculty, and the course shells look great, and instructional design is all there, but then the service piece is lacking. And I think we're seeing that in online retention rates. They're really struggling. And I think we need to really be more focused on how do we support those online students. And then just again, going back to the goldfish comment, how do we keep students engaged, and how do we keep them interested? And then I don't know about you, but the need for data, I get that from a lot of institutions, is they need data to provide validation in terms of what the services they're delivering. So how do you kind of keep those up and keep the data informed? And any other challenges that I'm missing or that jump out to you in your particular setting? No? Okay, I'll move on with these. So what I really want to suggest today is that these challenges for students and these challenges for institutions really require some sort of massive kind of change, like let's disrupt this environment. And is everyone familiar with the term disruptive innovation? It's very common over the last 3 to 5 years in the corporate world, and it's becoming more and more prevalent in higher education. But really the whole thought process is it's creating a new market space. It's innovating a current way of doing business and creating a whole nother venue and a whole nother avenue for consumers. So it really opens up that market. And I'm suggesting that you think about that, applying that to the services that you provide. And just to give you a couple examples from the corporate world, this is a little bit of a quiz. Which company is known for making technology accessible? Phone, camera, computer? And there's a hint. Apple, yes. So we all know that Apple sort of restructured the complete way we think about phones. No longer is it just to make phone calls. In fact, rarely do a lot of people make phone calls on their phones. You know, it's more about texting and emailing and using documents. And so they really opened up a whole new avenue for the phone. Okay, which company made shopping convenient? Online, fast delivery, everything at your fingertips. Amazon, amazing. I heard recently they're going to start delivering groceries, which I find interesting, but really, it always surprises me how quickly you can get something and when you just order it, and they really reconceptualize the way we think about convenience and online shopping. Which company empowered both buyers and sellers around the world? eBay. Someone said eBay. So eBay really took the whole idea of buying and selling and the consumer market of trading goods to a different level. It empowered the user, both buyer and seller, to create that own market space. Which company is best at delivering information online 24/7? This one's easy. Yes, Google. Google, just amazing. I think enough said. You really don't have to explain it that much. Everything is there, and I can't believe that people used to use Encyclopedia Britannica to write essays. But they did. Which company changed the way we think about customer service? Might be a little tricky. Zappos, yes. So Zappos' incredible customer service policies, return 365 days of the year, just really stepped it up in terms of making customer the first priority. And so I think what we can learn from this is thinking of ever going back to the way it was before. I mean, I don't know if you all had this massive phone, but I remember I had the huge phone and barely could I get reception, and why would we ever kind of go back to those days? And then the J.C. Penney's and Sears catalogs and the days of long lines, and then of course Encyclopedia Britannica. So in thinking that, I mean, that's what we used to have to deal with, and now this is what we're used to. I really challenge you to kind of apply some of those concepts to student services so we can turn those excuses into positive reactions. So now they can watch the video, they can finish the orientation after they put the kids to bed, and the video format keeps students more engaged, and then the veteran student can log on from base camp to do an advising session. So really thinking about flipping the way we provide support services. So I want to kind of apply it to this timeline analogy, and if you can think about student services on this sort of timeline with the face-to-face interactions being at the beginning of the semester. And typically, we kind of throw a lot of things at students. First year experience information, orientation, success strategies, advising, rules and regulations. We flood them with all this information we think they need to be successful right away, which, is tricky with it's information overload for the students, and it's hard for you to kind of keep up with that demand. And I think it results in a lot of questions down the road for students because it's not necessarily relevant. I remember at one point I was doing orientation and we were talking about test anxiety and test taking tips, and they hadn't even started school yet or even taken a test. And that sort of relevancy issue and that just-in-time training, there was a disconnect there. And so again, the problems are the relevancy, the information overload, and on your end, it's just trying that rush. I know you've probably been dealing with it these last couple of weeks, but the start of the semester and sort of burnout with students, with staff, and fewer resources and more students. And then, I don't know about you, but repeating a lot of the same information over and over again, which is tough just to keep fresh in your mind, to say, this is the first time the student has heard it, but I've said it 3,000 times, and I'm trying to keep it interesting, is really challenging. So what I'm suggesting is that we flip the way we provide student support and make some changes using technology. And so restructuring that whole support philosophy. and using technology to kind of space out how we provide support. So space out how we provide orientation and when, and space out how we provide advising and financial aid information. So we can move some of that face-to-face interaction to later in the semester. I think, I by no means think that online support services should replace face-to-face interaction, but I think it can only enhance it. I think it can allow you to maybe provide some of that information that you say over and over again to your students in a technology format, so when you meet with them in a face-to-face setting, it's much more personal. So really spacing out when and how you provide all of these services so that it's relevant for the student. And again, going back to sort of those corporate examples of why this works, you know, the content is accessible, it's convenient for the student, and it really puts the power back in their hands. It's saying, we're empowering you to choose and search out these services when it's meaningful for you, as opposed to when we provide it. And again, it's just online and sort of ups that level of service that I think students are expecting these days. So going into some of the specifics, I'm going to talk about 5 different technology means and how they can be applied to different student services settings. So I'm going to talk about podcasts and screencasts, social media, Facebook, Twitter, and then web conferencing, on-demand videos, and then just online services in general. There are a lot of companies that you can outsource a lot of these services to, and kind of what to think about when researching those companies. So what is one service that you currently don't provide online that you would really like to offer online? New student orientation. Okay, great. Any others? Okay. Advising. Okay, the 24/7 support. Okay, so I can provide you with a couple different ideas for both of those. We're actually developing an orientation with a community college in California right now, and so I'll be sure to send that information on once it's developed. But there are a lot of options out there already. So let's talk first about podcasts. So podcasts are really taking information from a creator side, either video or audio, and then uploading it to some sort of site online, such as iTunes, where that can be pushed into a feed for the user. So then the user can grab that same information from the online environment like iTunes and watch that on their phone, computer, or iPad. So that's simply what it is. Now, screencasts are recording information on your screen. So it's not necessarily holding a video up to your computer screen, but there are programs out there that will allow you to record everything that's happening on your computer screen. So I think there are a lot of different ways that student services can use this type of technology to provide some support services for students. I think it's really best in sort of a show and tell, instructional steps kind of environment, where you might demo some sort of software or explain the resources that are available on your campus. So I don't know about, do you have any, I saw on your website you have 5 registration steps, is that correct? Steps to registration. And they were outlined on your website, but do you have anything that sort of guides students through or talks them through what each of those steps means? Or video or something. So I think a screencast would be a really great tool that you could have placed right next to those registration steps that really explains each step in more detail. Like for example, in the application setting, if there's some specific questions that you always get about residency or international students, that can all be explained within a screencast, walking the students through those steps. And I just think it's easier. You don't want to write all of that information on your website. I mean, I think we know from web research that people don't read online. I think they're expecting some sort of video or some sort of voiceover that explains those in more detail. Now, I worked with a couple of schools where they used the same type of technology. They did podcasts for faculty and course descriptions. So instead of having, I remember my students would ask me, oh, what's astronomy like? And I could tell them what it was like 20 years ago at a completely different institution, but I can't really give them an idea of what the Astronomy 101 they're signing up for is going to be like. And so this one particular institution had their faculty members create podcasts for each of their courses and course sessions to really give the students a better idea of what to expect in that particular course. I think it could be really, really helpful for program description. So, what is it really like to be in the nursing program? And what can students expect? What's the rigor of that whole course? And what are their expectations outside of the classroom? I think a lot of students get in over their heads. So if they can know some of that information up front and even know what it's like to be a nurse after the fact, I think that can all be done in a podcast, even using current students as an example. I think a lot of people are now, do you have iTunes U? I couldn't find anything online per se. So a lot of schools are using iTunes U, particularly for course lectures. So they'll record lectures and then post those to an iTunes U environment. But I think you can use that same sort of format for student services. You can still use it for lecture, you can still use it for test review or grading or an intro to a course, but I think you can use iTunes U to kind of house all that information related to student services. This is an example of Truckee Meadows Community College, their iTunes U student services site. So I don't know if you can see that, but they have a lot of great podcasts around the Writing Center and navigating the college experience and how to get started at Truckee Meadows Community College. I think we saw in that video with Ceci, a lot of students are just confused about where to start. And so I think students are used to downloading music on iTunes, and this is a really great service that you can upload information to, and then students can even subscribe to it. So you can push daily feeds, you can push weekly feeds, you can push monthly feeds that they can receive right on their iPhone, iPad, or computer. And I'll just play an example of a screencast, actually from school right down the road. So Brookdale Community College here just has a screencast kind of talking students through student life and how to navigate the student life website. We'll see if it's coming up here. We're having like a few internet issues. I'll give it a second, of course, with technology. I can come back to that. I don't know if we can get that back up. We'll come back to that. But essentially, it's a video of the student life director, and he is, explaining what Brookdale has to offer in terms of, what services are available, what upcoming events are happening, and then he walks students through the student life website so they can find out more information. So he's sort of giving them a guide, so later down the road they can find out more information about how to find out what's coming up. So we'll move on. So a few things about implementation and podcasts and screencasts. I mean, do you see this as a valuable, let me just get kind of a gauge, do you see this as a valuable tool or different ways that you can use this, or any ideas on how you could apply this to current departments? Yeah. Right. Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of schools that have kiosks set up in the waiting line area, so to try to solve that very same issue. So they'll have computer stations set up where the line sort of forms and then have certain videos playing that will hopefully answer a lot of the common questions that are occurring. So I think that's a great idea. And I even know a lot of schools that send them the videos prior to an appointment. So if you're gonna have, say, a financial aid appointment, and you schedule it, then you can go ahead and send it to that financial aid, or you email that to the student and then say, watch this video before you come in for your advising appointment, and then they're more informed before they come into campus. Any other thoughts on where podcasts or screencasts could be implemented? Well, I'll talk a little bit about implementation, and again, it goes back to, what type of information is repeated over and over again, and that's typically the best type of information to move to a technological format. And then thinking about, is this the best delivery? Like I mentioned before, podcasts and screencasts are really good for procedural types of instruction and really explaining sort of a process for students. And so I think, okay, I didn't know if we were gonna get the internet back. Maybe he's checking it. The good thing about them is that it's really fast. They're very fast to produce and it's inexpensive. A lot of times there's free software already available out there, or you have some access to software currently on your campus. And so those are the pros to screencasts or podcasts, is that typically they're audio or you're recording the screens. There's no video involved, and you can easily update and edit those things. As we all know, things change a lot. Procedures change a lot on college campuses, and this is great technology to use for things that change often. Some cons, there is a little bit of a learning curve. It's also really difficult if you're the one doing the voiceover to first hear your voice. If anyone has any experience listening to to any sort of recording, at first you kind of just cringe a little bit when you hear your own voice, but you'll get used to that. And then once you do it a couple of times and practice, you can really churn out those podcasts or screencasts pretty easily. I think the challenge is always going to be marketing with any of these resources that I talk about. Really, how do you get your students to use these is always going to be the trick. So the more engaging you can make them, hopefully they'll speak for themselves. So I think, try again. Okay. I'll just click on this one for an example. So these are some sites that people can use to just get started using screencasts. A lot of these are free. I'll just click on this to see if we're back up and running. Camtasia is the one that I use the most often. So I don't know if you all have, you might have some sort of license within your online learning department. So you might want to check with them as well. My next section is online video, but I'll keep going. So getting started with iTunes U, that's a really great guide for faculty just to talk about, how to get this set up on your campus. It is completely free, so you just need someone that's really passionate and involved within the project and really ready to spend the time to get that up and running on your campus. I've listed, there's actually a podcast on how to develop iTunes U, so Ohio State created a great free podcast available. You can go online, download that for free, and it's going to give you step-by-step instructions as to how to get this going on your particular campus. So the next thing I want to talk about is web conferencing. So how many of you have been in a webinar or online meeting or Skype or Google? Great, so most of you. And I think everyone's really familiar with this type of technology, but not many schools are really using it for a student services setting. And I think it's one of the most powerful tools that schools can use to really reach a broad range of students, parents, admissions counselors. And so really in a web conferencing setting, I think you're looking at instruction that's interactive, that's informative. I see this being a great venue for orientation. So I've worked with several schools that do all of their orientations online. So they use a web conference system like Skype or Google or WebEx, and then they have several orientation sessions at night, on the weekends. So they're really opening that door for students that maybe can't come in during traditional office hours. Now, what about your office hours? Do you have night office hours and weekend office hours in student services for students that can't come in during 9 to 5? Yes? No? Yep. So that's great. But I think the bottom line is we can't necessarily be there 24 hours a day. So what if the student that wants to access the information at midnight? When I was doing online advising, I just said that I would get back to students within 24 hours, 7 days a week. And I would get lots of emails between like 12 and 4 in the morning. And then also on Thanksgiving, on Christmas, on major holidays, they would email me because that's when they're off. And so that's when they're going to reach out to us. That's when they're going to seek those support services, is when they have time. So I think using something like a web conferencing system to provide orientation, even parent orientations, I know a lot of schools are even providing targeted orientations for veteran students or at-risk students or first-generation students. So they're really tailoring that information that they provide to a certain student population. Now, this type of technology could also be used for advising or counseling sessions. As you can see in this one, you can have a webcam, so you could do a one-on-one sort of career counseling or financial aid advising session with a student in this particular format. You know, if you're working with veteran students or if you want to do a group advising. I know group advising is becoming more and more popular, where they have sort of these get started sessions where they cover some of that basic information before you meet one-on-one with an advisor. And I think using something like a web conferencing system would be a great platform for delivering group advising. Okay, let's move on here. So with web conferencing, a couple things to consider. It is a little tricky and a little nerve-wracking to do them live. So they can be live or on demand. I mean, that's one of the benefits, is that you could do a live orientation session where students can ask questions back and forth, either via chat or you can open up phone lines. And then you can record that. So then you can post that on your website. So even if a student couldn't make that live session time, they could come back and watch the recording. So it gives them a lot of flexibility in terms of services. They can no longer say, I didn't have time to do orientation, or I couldn't come in for orientation, because it's available on your website 24/7. You know, a couple things in terms of delivering them, again, sort of the staffing and the timing. It's not necessarily going to free up a bunch of time for you. It's just going to provide another venue for delivery. So you're still going to have to staff those orientations with the same amount of people. You're going to need support resources. You're going to need someone to look over those presentations for style and design. And you're going to need to be there during those live events, maybe 3 to 4 people, depending on how many students you have logging in. Now, these web conferencing systems can hold, you know, upwards of 1,000 people. I wouldn't recommend, you might want to limit it just for your sanity those first couple of times, maybe only do 25 per session if you want to have a more interactive environment. And practice them without a live audience before you would go into delivering them. It's a little bit scarier when you're having people trying to log in and they can't get in. But if you record those web conferencings prior to, you'll just get a feel for the software and the technology. Again, it's inexpensive. You probably have a license to some sort of web conferencing software within your IT or online learning department, or there are free ones available. Has everyone used Google Hangout? Couple people. It's really, I really like Google Hangout. When I started using it probably about a year ago for meetings, and it's really nice because I feel like the video is really stepped up in terms of other web conferencing, so there's not much of a weird delay with the video. You can see everyone who's logged in on the screen below. So there's just a lot of pluses to that type of technology. Another good thing is that you can collect all of the data. So I know data is a huge concern for schools. And when you're doing an online orientation, students are required to log in. So you can see who's logging in. You can download that into Excel. You have tracking information of everyone who's watched it. So you can go back and say, hey, we had 100 students log in to watch our orientation. We need more staff to provide more sessions. You can also do some quizzing at the end. So I know assessments are becoming more and more important in student services with learning outcomes. So you can include some pre and post assessments within this type of technology. Moving on to, good, should I try it? Okay, I'm going to try this. So we're moving on to on-demand videos, and let's see if this one works. I think videos are great. No. So videos are a great tool. For one, I was going to show personalization. So this particular video is from University of Michigan Advising Department, and they send out a video every week. So they email their students a video every week with timely suggestions, advising suggestions. Oh, hi. So the videos have timely advising or tips and tricks that are emailed to the student. This was week 3, so it kind of talked about, oh, the first 2 weeks are over. This is what you need to keep in mind in terms of advising. I mean, really great suggestions, adds a personal touch. The director of advising sent the video, and then also provides, I think those timely tips are critical. Okay, good. All right, well, now I'll just show you.
Hi, I'm Kurt Hill, here from the EAC. We hope your first 2 weeks at Michigan have been fantastic. As we head into week 3, we would like to put a couple of items on your radar. First, the meet and greet in the residence halls will be held on Wednesday,
I mean,
September
you kind of
18th.
get the idea there, but he goes over sort of a week of events and explains sort of what's happening on campus and gives the students just a real sense. It's that timely delivery. Now, in student services, are you responsible for plagiarism training, or is that more within the faculty? Okay, so in some schools, it falls under student services, but I'll show you this anyway in case you probably have to deal with the aftermath of plagiarism issues. And so this is a great tool. This is a particular company, Common Craft, where they have tons of videos posted on their website for educational purposes. And I'll just play a minute of their plagiarism video. I think outsourcing particular types of information can be really helpful. I know plagiarism it's not the most exciting topic, and so if you can come up with different ways to convey that type of information, I think it will be more interesting to students. So I'll just play a minute or 2 of this video.
You have something in common with the smartest people in the world. You see, everyone has ideas. We use our minds to create something original, whether it's a poem, a drawing, a song, or a scientific paper. Some of the most important ideas are published and make it into books, journals, newspapers, and trustworthy websites that become the building blocks for things we all learn. But ideas are also very personal, and we need dependable ways to keep track of the people behind the ideas we use because they deserve credit for their contribution, just as you do if someone uses your idea. Passing off another person's ideas or words as your own without credit is called plagiarism.
So that's just a snippet of what they offer. They're all in that same type of cutout format, but they have a lot of complex terms that they'll break down in a very simple manner. It may be more interesting for your students to understand. They've probably heard what plagiarism is over and over again, yet we know they're still doing it, and so there's something missing, and I think we need to maybe explain it in a different way. So lots of videos available that you can look through that are already developed online that you don't necessarily need to create, that you can pull into the services that you provide. My company, Innovative Educators, we develop student lingo, and so these are a series of on-demand student success workshops. And so it was partly from a lot of my experience in delivering some of these face-to-face workshops where students wouldn't show up, and also working with some different schools to really beef up their first-year experience program. And so we currently have 32 workshops. They're all available online. They're separated into these categories: academic and career exploration, where we talk about choosing a major and mastering the job interview, to time management and critical thinking. And so they really kind of cover a wide range of first-year student success topics. And what we found is that students don't know they need this information until they need it. So when you're delivering it in a lecture that they're forced to attend, or that as part of a course, it might not be as relevant to them. But the night before a test, they might click on an online workshop to get some test-taking strategies. So I'll just give you a little idea of what it's all about. And I'm going to email maybe Susan a link, a free trial link for the year. If you want to test out the videos with your students, we'll set up a website for your school, and you can just test it out and see if it's something of interest to you. This is kind of an example of what they look like, and I'll just kind of walk through some of these things. So here,
click on a link and watch a
I'm going to
recording.
fast
Students
forward
can
just so you
first
can get an
experience
idea
you can
of
post
the
to your
system.
student portal.
So students, we create a customized website for your particular institution that students can log into.
Institutional
And
website,
then
learning management system, and social networking sites. There is minimal.
And then you
IT
get all of that data, so you can see who's logging in, which workshops they watch, which will really guide some of your other services that you provide. If you see that a lot of students are logging in to the test-taking workshop, you might want to beef up your services around test-taking. And then just to give you, it's going to play here, I'll turn this up.
Now that we know what the various levels of Bloom's taxonomy are, I'd like you to take a minute to think back to your high school experience and think about the highest level at which you had to operate in order to make A's and B's in your high school classes. So take a minute to think about that and then write
Now
down
that just
what
gives
that
you an idea of what the workshops look like. They're all video-based. They're about 25 to 30 minutes in length, and they're interactive. So they're going to walk through, they're going to pause at certain times during the session and require students to do something with the information. And so these are all available online. Students can watch them from their phone or their iPad or their computer. And like I said, I'll email you all the link if you want to try them within your different departments on campus, student services and instructionally. We have a lot of schools using it for their first year experience program. And so as a supplement, and some schools that are just using all those videos to guide sort of that first year experience. All right. Now everyone, I think another great way to use videos is motivationally and inspirationally. And I think we know that at some points during the semester, students start to struggle and, maybe midterm, they kind of get, they lose track and their discipline kind of wavers, and how do we kind of keep them engaged? And I think the videos would be great, and I'll talk a little bit about Facebook, posting some videos on Facebook or emailing them some videos that might completely change their conception or their thoughts, their perceptions of what's going on at this particular time. So I want to play this video in full, and I know a lot of schools that are using this as part, kind of driving some of their orientation activities, because it really gets students to sort of think bigger about the ideas of success. We'll pull this up.
This is really a 2-hour presentation I give to high school students, cut down to 3 minutes. And it all started one day on a plane on my way to TED, 7 years ago. And in the seat next to me was a high school student, a teenager, and she came from a really poor family. And she wanted to make something of her life. And she asked me a simple little question. She said, "What leads to success?" And I felt really badly because I couldn't give her a good answer. So I get off the plane and I come to TED. And I think, geez, I'm in the middle of a room of successful people. So why don't I ask them what helped them succeed and pass it on to kids? So here we are, 7 years, 500 interviews later, and I'm going to tell you what really leads to success and makes TEDsters tick. And the first thing is passion. Freeman Thomas says, "I'm driven by my passion." TEDsters do it for love, they don't do it for money. Carol Coletta says, "I would pay someone to do what I do." And the interesting thing is, if you do it for love, the money comes anyway. Work. Rupert Murdoch said to me, "It's all hard work. Nothing comes easily, but I have a lot of fun." Did he say fun, Rupert? Yes. TEDsters do have fun working, and they work hard. I figured they're not workaholics, they're workaholics. Good. Alex Garden says, to be successful, put your nose down in something and get damn good at it. There's no magic, it's practice, practice, practice. And it's focus. Norman Jewison said to me, "I think it all has to do with focusing yourself on one thing." And push. David Gallo says, push yourself. Physically, mentally, you've got to push, push, push. You got to push through shyness and self-doubt. Goldie Hawn says, "I always had self-doubts. I wasn't good enough, I wasn't smart enough, I didn't think I'd make it." Now, it's not always easy to push yourself, and that's why they invented mothers. Frank Gehry said to me, "My mother pushed me." Serve. Sherwin Newland says, "It was a privilege to serve as a doctor." Now, a lot of kids tell me they want to be millionaires, and the first thing I say to them is, okay, well, you can't serve yourself. You got to serve others something of value, because that's the way people really get rich. Ideas. Tedster Bill Gates says, I had an idea. Founding the first microcomputer software company. I'd say it was a pretty good idea. And there's no magic to creativity and coming up with ideas. It's just doing some very simple things. And I give lots of evidence. Persist. Joe Kraus says persistence is the #1 reason for our success. You got to persist through failure. You got to persist through crap, which of course means criticism, rejection, assholes, and pressure. So the answer to this question is simple. Pay $4,000 and come to TED. Or failing that, do the 8 things, and trust me, these are the big 8 things that lead to success. Thank you, TEDsters, for all your interviews.
So for those of you that have been on TED, that's just an example of the endless amounts of videos that are accessible and available for free on TED and can really change the way a student thinks about success or about the particular class they're in right now, maybe with the crap example, and different things that can really get them to restructure their thought process that you oftentimes can't do. They see you as, you're their advisor or their career counselor or their tutor, and I think sometimes it needs to come from an outside perspective, and maybe just shooting them an email with this simple video would do the trick. And so for those of you that have been on TED, you probably know that there's endless amounts of content available, great content, and if you haven't been on TED, just be prepared to waste, well, I shouldn't say waste, but spend, a good day to sifting through all of the videos that are available. And I just recently saw EdTED. I don't know if you've been on that, but they have about 85,000 videos that revolve around different lessons for K through 12 and higher ed. So lots of good stuff already available for free. Some things to consider with video: if you are developing it in-house, video is extremely time-consuming to produce, and so you want to make sure that you're delivering content that's not going to change. I know I worked with one particular school who did video for all of their orientation, which was great, but then 2 weeks after they finalized the video production, they completely changed their, they upgraded to a new system. And so all of their video now needed to be redone. And so when thinking about video, you just want to make sure that you're providing some quick messages or some content that's not going to change frequently. And then I would also encourage students to get involved. So I saw one school who challenged students to post videos the first week of classes, just sort of saying, what are your tips for the first week of class, or what are your tips during finals? And so I think students like to hear from students, and so just having them post the videos themselves, I think, really encourages the participation as well. And you can turn it into some sort of game or incentive. I don't know if you can give away prizes from your bookstore, but students will do anything really for a t-shirt. They get pretty excited about mini giveaways and posting of those videos too. So the pros, I think, are always that it can be videos just super engaging. In my opinion, it's the top level of production in terms of technology. Again, it's just going to be time consuming to create and difficult to change, and you just have to have also, if you're going to do it in-house, the staffing available to produce those videos. Now, if you're going to collect videos from online resources, it's just a matter of vetting those videos, and I would recommend getting students involved in that process as well. So, and I can share this with you. I'll share the PowerPoints and all the resources, and then this particular Excel document that we created, it's going to open here, where we had students vet all of these videos for us. So we just set up an online Excel document that had, the video title, video URL, source of the video, date, ideas for use, and then we had student employees that we trusted to vet the content, to go through all these and fill in these boxes for us, which saved us a lot of time on the front end, and we also got the feedback directly from the students, and so I felt like it was really helpful, and I'm happy to share this with you so you can look over these particular videos and then you can add to it as well. Does anyone have any questions? If anyone has any questions throughout, I'm happy to take questions throughout as well. So I want to talk a little bit about social media. I think the big three are probably Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And do you all have a Facebook site? Facebook. Okay, and then does Student Services monitor that, or? Communications, public relations, okay. Well, I'm going to focus specifically on Facebook, because that's the most I have most experience with Facebook in an educational setting. So I did monitor our Facebook site at the community college I was at, Front Range Community College. That was part of my responsibilities. And really what we used it for is motivation, fun, engagement, some type of social interaction. It's also a great way to house all of these other technology resources that you create. So the web conferencing, the videos, the screencasts you can push out. You can use Facebook as a marketing tool. And I used it in a couple different ways. I would post payment deadlines, I would post drop add dates, I would post study tips. I tried to mix it up. So I would probably post 5 to 6 days a week and I would change it up. I would do something informational and then maybe post a video, but always, always, always I would include a photo. So if you don't include a photo with your Facebook postings, you will see dramatic loss of attention. And right when you post a photo with that Facebook posting, no matter what it is, your likes, your shares, everything is going to go up dramatically. So I think there are a lot of different ways that Student Services. Now, does Student Services have a hand in that, or is it purely like from a recruiting standpoint, or is it with current students? Okay. For recruitment. And I would say it has probably even a little bit more value with current students because they're already here. They're going to like your page. If you post relevant information, you can remind them of things throughout the semester, and then they can talk to other students. So I've listed a couple of examples of different schools and their Facebook sites and their Twitter feeds, just to give you an idea of who I think is doing a great job out there in the world of Facebook. It's a tough job. I mean, it takes a lot of time. And so you want to have someone that's really invested in posting frequently. So again, what information can you deliver with a picture? Can you post something 5 days a week? I would encourage who's ever responsible for it to create some sort of calendar. So I created a calendar, filled it in with first the important dates throughout the semester, then I filled it in with holidays, and then I would kind of fill it in with something funny, a comic, or some sort of inspirational video, but really having an Excel calendar and then working with the other departments. I would talk to financial aid, I would talk to career services, I would talk to all the different departments and say, hey, is there anything coming up that you really need me to remind students about? I need ideas for posts, just let me know. I'm happy to push something out about financial aid deadlines. So again, the pros are it's super easy to set up. People are probably familiar with the Facebook technology, and so you don't have that whole learning curve of learning something new. And there's tons of data in Facebook. You can see how many people liked it. You can see if they kind of browsed it but didn't click on it. You can see if they shared it. So you can really get a sense as to what students are interested in. So the amount of data that you can collect on Facebook is amazing. The cons, again, are probably the time-consuming piece, and initially getting marketing Facebook and maybe trying to tie it to some sort of, again, contest or trying to get faculty involved and so they can promote it throughout their classes. Again, I would get a lot of questions on Facebook as well. You would have to monitor posts and questions, which I think is a good thing. But if I would post something about financial aid, you have to make sure that person who's ever monitoring it is willing and ready to answer those questions, kind of has a feed on their phone that says, there's a question, and get back to the student right away, because they're used to immediate response. The last thing I want to talk about is online services. I've listed a ton of companies out here that I've worked with, and I know that other schools I've worked with that offer off-the-shelf services. Innovative Educators is my company, and then IntelliResponse. I know someone mentioned getting immediate responses to questions. So IntelliResponse is a program that you can have on your website where students can ask a question, and you've already pre-populated those responses so that it'll spit back the answer to that question. So really it's, I can show it to you if we have a second here. I'll show you an example. It was very helpful. I worked on this project at Front Range, and it was extremely helpful for the call center and during times of peak registration. I don't think we have internet. It's coming up. But anyway, you can go on, I can show you an example of that. If you go on frontrange.edu, it says Ask FRCC. A student can type in, what's the payment deadline, and they'll get an immediate response back. So it doesn't require extra staffing. The time is on the front end where you have to build in all of those answers. They have some templated questions and responses, but we found, and I have stats to show how much the calls dropped in the call center and financial aid and different information available, so feel free to contact me about that. But what I did is type up a sheet that lists all of these companies and the services they provide, just kind of a quick synopsis of that. So I'll be sure to get that to the contact person here, so you can email that out to everyone so you can see all of these services that are available a lot of times for free. So Intern Bound, for example, and Intern Match, they help college students find internships, and it's a free service. Learn Up helps students prepare for particular types of jobs. So they partner with big companies like Starbucks and Safeway and have online training programs. So your students can get certified to be a Safeway customer service employee or a Starbucks employee. So it just sort of gives them some extra training, and it's all available for free. So I'll be sure to get that, that synopsis to all of you so you can check out those companies. A couple things to consider when working with outsourcing. You want to make sure that they can provide you with all of the data, easy integration, look for additional costs, really kind of look over their contracts and their fees with a fine-tooth comb, make sure they're covering everything, ask questions, make sure that they have customer support. So that's a huge thing. I don't think if you adopt a service, you want to be responsible for fixing it or answering those questions if something goes wrong. So when working with outside vendors, make sure that that customer support is built in to their product. And then I would talk to current clients. So if you're interested in any of these products, I'm happy to line you up with a community college that's using the same one just to get their experience. A lot of times you just have to sift through some of their marketing that the company provides and go right to the source and get some best practices and lessons learned. So I know it's a lot of information, and there's tons. Is there any resource in particular that you feel like you would use, or any particular service that, I don't know, you would be interested in, or any questions at this time? None? Yeah, I can certainly give you more information on I would show you if I could bring it up, but I would definitely check out IntelliResponse, check out frontrange.edu, and then just go, there's a box that says Ask FRCC, and you can get more information that way. And I'll be sure to follow up with everyone on all those free resources and everything available. So feel free to contact me if you have any questions. I'm happy to help or point you in the right direction of schools that are using some of these services and how they're using them. This was just kind of a brief overview of all the things that are possible, but I'm happy to direct you to more resources if possible. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank our presenter. I think that was very valuable information, and I do thank you for your patience while we tried to get things moving. So, but I think we very much would like to see the information from you, because I think there's a lot there that the college could benefit. So let's